Go for it. Do that and understand who you are.
At the age of 9, I was delivering newspapers, waking up at 5:30 every single day. Most entrepreneurs screw this up. They think it's their end user. It's not. It's actually your employees. It's the law of friendship with content creation.
If you can nail your client experience, you can nail your growth.
You know, they say experience is the best teacher of any of it.
Chris Lee, what's up, man? Dude, I'm glad to have you here.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Guys, Chris Lee started selling Cutco knives door to door from the very bottom and built a $233 million company per year annual revenue and exited two different companies. I want to hear more about that in a second, for 9 figures. I'm always like, oh, I have an 8-figure construction company. This guy is a 9-figure guy. And we can't wait to dive in and just pick your brain and just like learn how we can build our own 9-figure companies if we want. Culture, processes. I'm excited to jump in.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So Chris, you wanted to go to medical school, right? And that's kind of what I heard. I listened to the first 3 episodes of the Founder podcast on Spotify. Loved it. I think you're also on YouTube, Chris Lee. But there's a professor that said that you could save more lives by owning a successful business than you can by being a doctor. And that pretty much changed the trajectory of your life, right?
It really was. Yeah. Those words like really impacted me at a young age. You know, I think I was, at that point, I was either 22 or 23 years old, and I had, gotten into the sales game, and that's the way I was paying for college, but I was planning on being a doctor. And really, I mean, my main motivation of being a doctor was to make a lot of money and to help a lot of people. And the one example in my life, I grew up in a home that didn't have a lot of money. My dad was a school teacher. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And my mom and dad came from completely different backgrounds. My dad was kind of like your white trash trailer type guy, and my mom came from the East Coast, fancy, well-to-do. My grandpa was a doctor, and so he was the one example in my life of wealth, and that's how I thought that was the only way that you could make money, right? And it was go and be a medical doctor, and so that was always a big inspiration to me. But later, I realized I didn't want to go to school for the rest of my life, and if I had the ability to still save lives and change lives, without being in the medical profession, I was all about it.
I love that, bro. Like, business can change a massive amount of lives, have a massive impact, but it does take a mindset shift, right? And so there was probably a massive mindset shift that you had from wanting to be that, as Robert Kiyosaki says, those doctors are in the E quadrant, right? Maybe the S quadrant, the E and the S on the left side. But what got you to move over to that be an I quadrant business owner and investor, kind of letting other people make you money and work for you and buying back your time. And then of course the I quadrant, money working for you, and you can make more money with the money you have reinvesting. So what kind of got you to that other side of the cash flow quadrant there?
Yeah. To your point, yes, doctors are definitely employees. I mean, they're highly paid employees,
right.
But as Tony Robbins says, they're still dancing bears, right? They have to go and dance every single day,
or else they don't get paid.
Yeah, they don't get paid, and so it was really sales, right? Like getting into sales and realizing that I could leverage my time and bring value to an hour and get paid. The more value I brought, the more value I could extract from an hour. That was the initial aspect, and then building sales teams, right? Like that's really what shifted me over into the business owner and investor. And I was always intrigued by investing. Always. I mean, my dad was actually a very disciplined investor, even though he didn't have a lot of money. He made about $65,000 a year. He invested about half of his paycheck every single month. And he did that in the traditional sense, 401k, just really what he was taught, but he was very disciplined. And so, I had good examples of being an investor from a young age, and getting the sales is really what started getting me thinking as a business owner. In fact, I think like being in sales is like the highest level of employership or employee that you could be, what I call an entrepreneur rather than an entrepreneur. So someone that works inside an organization but still is building very much so their own business or their own book of business or whatever it may be. And so doing that door-to-door sales is really what changed the trajectory for me and got me thinking that way.
So yeah, you started off being an entrepreneur, and I actually really love that. Not a lot of people talk about that being an option, right? Being a sales guy for someone else's company. I mean, I have sales guys that work for my general contracting company, right? And they have profit share, and it's not. I would say if you're wired to be an entrepreneur, as at the core of who you are as a human, go for it. Do that and understand who you are. I've always been entrepreneurial. I started off like 11 years old putting a candy machine in my parents' real estate office, and then I was the top sales guy in my little middle school, like going door to door selling candy, right? Like it's double candy. But then I started my own walking stick business and my own training wild horses business in Texas when I lived there. And so it kind of just snowballed. I'm like, wow, I'm like always kind of starting a new business. Did you find yourself kind of having that same mentality even as a kid?
As a kid, not so much, just because I wasn't taught in that way, right? I was a very hard worker. I was taught that like you just go and you work, right? And so I traded a lot of my time for money, right? My very first job at the age of 9, I was delivering newspapers, waking up at 5:30 every single day, which shifted later as I started managing all the newspaper delivery guys to 4:30, 365 days a year. I was driving tractor and making pizzas and waiting tables and delivering oil and just doing all kinds of just traditional employee work. And so I learned discipline and hard work from a young age, but it wasn't until Cutco that I realized, at the age of 18, I was a junior in high school and saw a little advertisement that said, make at least $13 an hour. And like the words that really intrigued me was at least. Like, what does this mean? Yeah. And so, wait, I can like actually create more value and get paid more. It's not just show up and get paid. So that was very intriguing for me. But it's interesting. The real difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur is just level of risk. And so I think most people don't go into entrepreneurship because they're scared of the risk. And it is risky, right? Mm-hmm. Like you going and creating value or starting something new, you have no idea whether or not it's going to work out, right? Like the only thing you can bet on is your work ethic and your ability to figure things out. And so, I've seen a lot of my buddies do the intrapreneur route where they're basically putting the risk on the business owner or the founder because they've already taken the risk. They've already established that this product or whatnot works, and they're forking out the money for advertising and marketing and everything else. And and they're able to build their own little empire inside. One of my really good friends, he retired as an intrapreneur with $37 million. Wow. Like he got stock options and, built his own little sales empire on somebody else's dime. Like, I think it's a great way. Most guys that, I run the Founder podcast and obviously I would encourage people to go and found things, but like you can go and be a very much an entrepreneur as inside somebody else's organization.
I love that. So you were an entrepreneur with the Cutco thing and you were successful with that. You made that $13 an hour, but you probably crushed it even beyond then. But then you started your own first company that was a massive failure, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So why did that happen? What did you do wrong? Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, I was like any successful entrepreneur from the fact that you think, hey, I already know how to do everything. I'm basically doing everything for
running a business
for this business owner. Yeah. Why don't I go and do it myself, right? Yeah. Like it's the classic myth, right? The entrepreneur myth, right? That just because I know how to be a really good technician, somehow I'm going to be a really good entrepreneur. And fact is, I sucked at it, right? Like I went and I took the risk and I failed massively. Started my first business at the age of 24 in 2008. Brought on bad partnerships, raised some money from close loved ones to invest into my business, tried growing too fast, too quick, Did everything for all the wrong reasons. I was trying to impress everybody, like, look at me, Mr. Successful Business Owner, before I was actually successful, which, by the way, I think is probably the number one reason for failure is people.
The foundation wasn't there, but you're building this tower, and all of a sudden it was built on a faulty foundation and it fell over.
Yeah, I think what happens is when people start seeing a little bit of success, they rob the business for their own ego rather than continue to invest in the business.
Yeah.
And so I fell into that trap, right? I was trying to impress everybody externally. I was trying to impress my customers by being the cheapest in the marketplace. I was trying to impress my employees by paying them the most, right? Most commission for the least amount of, revenue. And it was just a massive recipe for failure, especially. And then you add in, I mean, we launched this thing in 2008. The financial markets and everything else were crashing around us. And so it was just, every bad ingredient that you could put into a potentially failed business, we put into our business.
Yeah.
And, so 2.5 years later, after launching my business, I found myself filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy for $2.2 million, losing everything with no potential way out, man. And, but at that point I had learned a lot as far as, what I needed to do to be successful. It taught me a whole lot going through all that poor decision making, and they say experience is the best teacher of any of it. So you can learn by experience, you can learn through education, or you can learn through others, right? And by far, experience is the best.
So my COO in my company he always says this, like he had like however many decades or whatever years of schooling. But his first year, he had his own business for 10 years. But his first year of owning his construction company back in the day taught him more than all the schooling for the 15 years or whatever it was, including college.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, traditional education is rarely the answer.
Right.
I'm a big
Unless
believer
you want to be
in
a doctor.
education. Yeah. I'm a big believer in education, but rarely in traditional education. I think occasionally, right? Like if that's the career path and for a fact, right, you actually have experience. Like the one thing I recommend to anybody that coming out of high school, it's like, go figure out what industry you want to be in first. Like go intern, go make coffee, go do something in a space that you think that you want to be in.
Right.
Be sure that you want to be and understand, is the education, right? Is traditional education the actual way to get from point A to point Z in this? And if it's not, if it's just, I need to start from the ground up and build up and I'm going to actually get more progress by working 4 years than going to school 4 years, do that.
Right.
And so
I have a lot of people that come to me and they're very short-sighted. They're like, oh, I'm just going to get a summer job because they're at the beginning, they're at the bottom, at a golf country club. I'm like, do you want to be a server for the rest of your life at a country club, or do you want to do real estate? Or do you want to do business? They're like, oh, I'm like, go work for $7 or for free for the real estate broker if you want to do real estate. And they're like, oh, like, got it. Like, because I'm like, then look at where you're going to be in the next year or 4 or 3. Yeah, it's just,
it's hilarious. It's hilarious because it's ingrained into us at a very young age that we have to go get good grades, go to college, spend all this money, go invest $100,000 in 4 to 5 years of time in order to get this degree. And like, people are willing to pay to do that, yet they are unwilling to go and work for somebody for free or for very little, right? It's like, wait, what? Like, you want to spend money for experience, but you won't actually get paid money for experience.
I always hated school, bro. It was a box that I felt like I was in. I didn't really care about Christopher Columbus and like all the stuff. Like, but when I started learning about the stuff that I actually was like wired to be interested in, I just dug in. Like, I was like, whoa, I actually like reading books. I actually like to learn stuff. And I thought I was dumb. I was told I was going to be a complete failure. I was like, the teachers would say, you're full of baloney. You're not going anywhere. You're just going to be a dropout. And I was a dropout. I got kicked out of every single school I went to. I was smoking pot. I was getting expelled. I was getting suspended before that. I was going to detention before that. It just escalated. But I was one step away from either being dead or in jail for a very long time. I was in an alternative school. I was in an alternative school, and my parents the next step was jail. If I make a mistake there, it's jail or juvie. Yeah. I was like 14. But anyway, Yeah, my
You
parents.
know, the interesting thing with me in school is like, I was actually a really good student, right? Like,
Interesting.
I got good grades, and so like I know a lot of times entrepreneurs, they're the C students, and they're the guys that are
Yeah.
getting kicked out or going to
Yeah.
jail or whatnot, and so they're
Yeah.
kind of forced into entrepreneurship just because the traditional route won't work for them. And so I'm just lucky that I was able to get out because I was actually really good at it, right? Like I had like a 3.96.
I was lucky to be able to get out. I love that.
Right, like because like everything in society was pointing me like I need to be a student. I was good at it. I actually enjoyed
You'd be a
school,
great
right?
doctor.
Yeah, I would have been a fantastic doctor, but once again, just got lucky that I was able to get out of the system and go towards entrepreneurship.
Thank God, right? Thank God. So, bro, like there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast right now. They're watching it, whatever. A lot of people who follow me are construction business owners that want to scale and automate their company. And or they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. Maybe they like construction, maybe they like entrepreneurship. I mean, we already talked about, hey, go get a job at, like say, for example, a construction company and work your way up to be a superintendent, then a project manager, and then you kind of elevate, then maybe start your own. I always work for other contractors, and I never really elevated too far because I just started my own business at 22. So I didn't really have a lot of time to I don't know, like, what would you say in that regard? Like for someone who's maybe early 20s, wants to maybe own their business one day, should they go spend the next 10 years working for, another construction company, or what do you think? I don't know.
So really, I mean, you get experience or you get things through resources, and you have three resources: time, energy, or money, right? Like, so you can buy your way to the top, right? Like with money, like you can spend money on better education. There's so much. So since dropping out of college, I've spent about $1 million on my personal education,
Like mentors and programs.
This is with mentorship, masterminds, events, coaches, like all the things. In fact, I made a rule back in 2015 that once a quarter I would go to some sort of something, right? Whether it was a mastermind event or being in the room and just networking and being around people. So I think that's like the number one thing that you got to do is like, I got to get in the right room with people that have done it and learn from people. That's a mistake I made early on in my career, that I just wanted to act like I had it all figured out myself, and I didn't reach out for help. I didn't pay money for help. I didn't read books, all the different things. And so then there's time and energy. You can put a lot of time and energy. You can go and figure it out on your own. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of energy. And so this can be time invested into working for somebody else. So there's two ways that I learned the most. So there's first the experience of just failure and not being able to do it on my own, right? And I went and I launched a bunch of little businesses, and they just weren't taking off. The other two ways is I started spending the money, and I started spending the time working with people that knew what they were doing. And so there's a portion of my career between 2012 and 2016, it was 4.5 years, that I called my paid education, in which I specifically went to go and work for somebody else with the reason to study exactly what they were doing. And I learned a lot. There was a lot of principles that I learned. So I went and I specifically was like, I'm going to go work for high growth businesses in the home improvement sector so that I can see exactly what they're doing. And so I had very high level jobs with them, sales management, executive, those type of things. And I was studying the CEO over those 4.5 years, and I worked for 3 different companies. And the reason it was 3 different companies is like, I wanted to learn from 3 different CEOs, 3 different organizations, exactly what they were doing. And so I got paid a lot of money to be educated. And I would highly recommend that for anybody that doesn't have the experience. And then during that time is when I started investing outside into my own education. Like I said, in 2015 is when I came up with this rule for myself that once a quarter I have to go and do this. And I still maintain that to this day, even though I've had 9-figure exits and everything like that. Like, my education and like who I am becoming as an individual is more important than anything else. And so So that's been my focus. And like, if you're really wanting to go and launch something, like go and do that. And there's several principles that I extracted over that, like what is most important to go and scale a business. And I'm happy to jump into those.
Yeah, dude, what are those principles, man? Okay, so you dropped out of college, right? And you paid like $1 million towards learning for yourself, like mentors and,
So since dropping out of college, I've actually spent about $1 million on my own personal education. In fact, in 2015, I made a rule that every quarter I need to go and invest in something, whether it's a mastermind or a coach or some sort of event. And so I mean, just getting in the rooms and being around the right people has been a huge aspect that has really helped take off my career. But, there was a portion of my career which I referred to as my paid education, which I highly recommend to anybody that is really looking at going and scaling up. Because up until that point, I had owned businesses, but there was a lot of things that I just didn't know, and traditional schooling was going to teach me. And really, ultimately, it was experience or being around those people that did know. And so in 2012, I went back to work for somebody else, and I spent the next 4.5 years working and studying these entrepreneurs and CEOs that were building these big and incredible enterprises. And so, like, specifically, when I would be sitting at the board table or in a meeting or whatnot, and the CEO would be giving direction, a lot of people would be like, well, how does this affect me? And I would be asking the question, why is he giving this direction? Why are they taking this move? And so literally just sitting there and studying and making a lot of money. I made on average over those 4.5 years around $400,000 a year, which is great.
Yeah.
As an employee.
That's amazing.
But more importantly was the experience and the notes that I was taking of like the principles of how they were building their business. And so over 4.5 years, I studied from 3 different CEOs, 3 different businesses, and just learned a ton. And meanwhile, like I said, in 2015, kind of midpoint of that is when I really started investing outside in my education, hiring coaches, hiring consultants, paying for workshops, all the different things so that I could increase my personal value. Because a lot of times, as humans, as entrepreneurs, we only focus on the money. The money comes and goes, right? You can lose it all. And ultimately what you're wound up is with who you are. And so who I was needed to be improved consistently. And so I was looking for any opportunity to improve my ability to go and bear fruit.
I love it. That's a beautiful thing, man. I really want to know about Soulja Power. I mean, you started, so your first business, it was a failure. You learned, and of course you had all this paid education and all this stuff adding up to this brain that understands, and the human of yourself that really understands what it really takes to be an entrepreneur. And it's not just like an entrepreneurial seizure, as the E-Myth says. It's a actual thing, not just being a technician or not just being a manager, it's being an entrepreneur. It's like a whole nother transcendent level. So you started Soulja Power, which you wound up selling for how much?
Initially it was 180 million, and then later we had a valuation of 340.
That is so crazy. I mean, that's like, I just got chills when you said it, not just because it's a big number and money, but like, bro, that's so much value that you're giving to the world. There's so many employees that you're changing lives for their families. There's so many clients that you're changing their lives with, giving them a great product, right? So you started this company, you sold it for hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. What was that shift, from the first company to this company? I
mean, there was a lot of shifts, you know, and the first company, and there's a lot of different companies in between, a lot of failures, a lot of just barely going. I flipped cars, flipped houses, owned a medical alert company, a coupon book. I mean, all kinds of crazy crap that I tried making dollars on.
Yeah, you got to try stuff to know what resonates.
I mean, the biggest principles that I learned going back and working for others was like doing everything by design and on purpose, right? Not just like whatever happens.
Right.
And so, day number 1, launching Soulja out of my garage, it was November 2017 when we actually started advertising. And everything was specifically on purpose. And number one was building a culture. I realized how important culture is to running a business. And when I talk culture, we're talking about vision and mission and core values and like the way that you operate and communicate with your people, harboring a culture of integrity, harboring a culture of transparency where, people knew exactly what was going on and, just so many different aspects. In fact, if you go to my Instagram, I sell this culture guide for $29. It's a 10-step of how you build culture. And these are the rules and the principles that I learned over years of working for others and applying in my own business. In fact, this blueprint of what I've created not only helped me get a 9-figure exit, but also a company that I consulted for equity ended up exiting at 9 figures. And another company used my blueprint that they paid just for me to consult, and they exited for 9 figures.
Wow.
Like this all happened over a period of 5 years of like utilizing these principles. And so a lot of people just underestimate the power of culture. Culture is essentially what drives any single business. Yeah. And there's the old adage, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's true. If you think about like the greatest company in the history of the world, it's Apple, right? And the reason why Apple has been able to survive isn't because of their strategy. It's because of their culture. They've created this culture of innovation and futuristic and sleek and opportunity within their organization. And their strategy has changed many different times. They did not start in the 70s with the goal to make an iPhone, right? Like that was never part of the strategy. It was personal computers. Yep. And then later from personal computers, it shifted to the iPod that you could carry 100 songs in your pocket. And then from there, it turned into an iPad, an iPhone, an Apple Watch, now these vision goggles, the VR, all kinds of different things. Like the strategy is always changing. And so for me, when I built my business, I always let my people know, like, hey, look, currently the strategy is solar, and we might sell solar forever, but the culture is going to be the thing that will keep you here and be long term. And so, day one was very much on purpose what we were creating. I was painting the vision. Hey, in 5 years, we're going to have 500 employees and we're going to be the largest solar installer in the nation. And we're going to do this, that, and the other. And people are thinking like, you're crazy, dude. We're sitting here in a sweaty garage that doesn't have air conditioning. There's 4 of us, 5 of us, 6 of us, right? Like, how is this possible? But like being that visionary that had a direction and a plan to be able to go and execute, that was very much a huge key to going and growing that business.
That's amazing, man. I mean, like really starting from the beginning, nailing your core values. And, even when I started my business, I didn't necessarily nail my core values. I knew what I wanted culture-wise, like, the tone and the communication and all these things. But now we have our 7 core values that are really crucial, and we stand behind that. We're utilizing technology for everything, and we're providing a first-class communication, to our clients. And so it boils down to the client experience being our number one thing. I mean, that's like, if you can nail your client experience, you can nail your growth.
And what I would add to that is you got to understand who your clients are. Yeah. Your first client are your employees. And most entrepreneurs screw this up. They think it's their end user. It's not. It's actually your employees. Yep. If you can really sell them and really have them on board for whatever experience that you're trying to provide the marketplace, then they in turn are going to take care of your end user. Yeah. And so like for me, internal marketing is way more important than external marketing. Yeah. Right? Like the vision, the sale, the confidence boosting, right? Yeah. Like being in alignment with what you said you would do and those type of things.
How did you nail down, like, where did you put everything as far as like, okay, here's our core value? Did you just have like, I don't know if they had Google Docs back then, or like, do you have like some sort of internal process, like, or is it on the whiteboard, or like, how did you kind of disseminate? I mean, you only had 4 guys in a garage, but as you grew, right?
Yeah. So first of all, 2017 wasn't that long ago. Yes, we did have Google Docs back
Dude,
then.
That's crazy. Just 2017
and color televisions.
What were you doing when the Indians were here, man?
So, but yeah, at first there was all different types. So we would, I had a relationship with gotprint.com, which was a super cheap way to be able to go and print things. And we had posters made, but everything was based off of that, right? Like our 6 core values, which we created based off of, we actually did it around our acronym of SoulGen. So SoulGen stands for solar generated power, but we also created core values that aligned with what we were trying to build with SoulGen. So it was synergy, outside the box thinking, love of family, generosity, excellence, and no excuses.
Nice.
And that was very much part of every part of our process: the hiring, the firing, the recognition, the promotion. Like when we're in an interview, like one of our core values is no excuses. Tell me a time in which you were able to take full ownership and did not express excuses, right? Like, that would be, so it was very much the core of what we did. And then on top of that, wristbands that have our mission statement that everybody would wear.
Wow.
Our mission was, building a brighter future for our people. And so that was part of every week conversation. It was the tagline in our emails. It's different. There's so many different ways in which you can I want to know, integrate into your business.
How granular did you get on processes like SOPs and everything like that? I mean, I really preach on that to my audience here and to my staff and even our clients. I'm like, we got the SOPs, so it's like, my business can just run without me ultimately. And everyone knows exactly what to do. Our recruiting process, with our core values in there. Like, how granular did you get? I mean, how do you grow a $300 million company? Is it all just great? You have core values written somewhere, but how much more granular did you get?
No, for sure. So, I mean, you're talking about working on the business and not in the business.
Yes.
And from day one, we were designing to replace ourselves. And in fact, we teach employees that like your job is to get yourself replaced and then move yourself up the value ladder.
Yeah.
Right. And so were we the best in business at processes? No, but were we pretty dang good? Yes. But I think more important than SOPs, that is actually the precursor to SOPs, which is a great accountability chart where people understand who they are accountable to and how you fit into the organization. Yeah. So that's step number one. Like most entrepreneurs, when they're getting started, like they'll create maybe an accountability chart, an org chart for as it exists. Mm-hmm. I always create my accountability charts 5 years in front. And so it's a roadmap of how we are going to go and grow. And, which means that right now, if you have 5 people and then later you're expecting to have 500, most people are wearing anywhere from 50 to 150 hats to be able to go and grow that.
Right.
And so, but then defining out, if you have this org chart or this accountability chart, like what's the roles and the responsibilities within that? So what's the title of each position? What are the 4 to 7 key responsibilities that they have. Mm-hmm. And then within those responsibilities, how those fit into the whole customer experience. So like dial in the org chart, dial in the roles and responsibilities, dial in the customer experience. Like what does it look like for a customer to enter into your climate and and how does it look on the other end and how do they continue to progress, whether it's giving you referrals or whatnot. You design that out. Now you go and you build the standard operating procedures and you tie in SOPs that help get certain KPIs, right? And so each position is got to be defined by 2 to 4 main key performance indicators. That is all they own. They have to be able, an employee has to know how to win. If they, and most employees in most organizations don't know whether they're winning and losing, and there's nothing worse than being confused. You never want a confused employee and you never want a confused buyer, right? And so know how to win within your organization by designing out those KPIs and then having strict processes in which they are going to go and perform those KPIs. And so, and there's a lot of different ways that you can store these. Some of my favorite are like Trainual. Trainual's a fantastic software where you can go and you build out your training manual with SOPs and videos and scripts and everything else. And there's a lot of other softwares out there that you can go and build.
So I've actually developed a whole internal Squarespace website that a lot of these guys have purchased, and it comes even pre-built with like construction business systems. Actually, later in this year, 2024, I'm launching my software called Structure. And so I'm really excited about that. It's coming later this year. Structure is going to be where they can put all their SOPs and put all the quizzes to make sure the staff really understand their role, right? So it's not just like, what does a project manager do? There's a bunch of bullet points. He does the schedule and the the budget, all these things. But then it's like a quiz, and then it gets submitted to the admins in the software, and it goes into, them knowing, did you get 80%? Did you nail it 100%? Do you really understand your role? And then also, like, to your point, those 2 to 4 KPIs per role, really having like a goal tracker. So like I've built in goal tracking where at the end of each week on Friday, like for example, my sales guy would be like, how many leads did we get? How many initial meetings did we schedule with those leads? How many dollars did we close? How many, there's kind of like, 4 or 5 questions that are we winning or are we not? And there's not really a gray area. It's not green, yellow, red. It's red and green. Did we win? Did we not? So yeah, that's a huge component of growing a company, I would say. That's a really good point.
So I mean, that all plays into the psychology of recognition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of business owners, they get caught up with like, the only way that I can attract good talent is by paying a lot of money. Pay is just only one aspect of the way that somebody is compensated.
Yeah, recognition.
Right? They're compensated through recognition. They're compensated through education. They're compensated through experience. They're compensated through culture. They're compensated through opportunity, right? And it's really imperative as business owners that we understand that, and that when we recruit and try to draw good talent in, that we don't just focus on pay. Because if you're only focused on pay, what's going to happen is the next time they're offered $10 more, or $1,000 more a year or whatever else, they're going to jump for that opportunity because that's the thing that they've been trained on, that I am only a part of an organization is for this. And so you have to remove that. Pay is only part of the compensation, really focusing on how I can recognize these people. So KPIs is one of those ways, because when somebody knows that they're winning and they're being recognized for that plays into like I said, that form of compensation. And then just being a part of an incredible culture that has great energy and great education. So, I'm a big believer that you have to focus on the whole human, right? That's my mission in life, is teaching business owners how to develop whole human employees, not just the economic side, right? There's 3 other aspects. You got to have the physical side, the associations, and the spirituality. If you do not address those other 3, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to add value into your employee's life and to really create trust and longevity of them working with you.
I love it, bro. And I've even developed 16 questions, and I developed this as a kind of a team with Alan and Vivek and some guys that spoke in my conference. But interesting and challenging work. These are some questions that we ask all of our new hires. Do you want a good salary? I asked them to rank these things in order 1 through 16 on a little jot form. A boss you can trust, flexible working arrangements, right? These are all things that employees might want, and they rank them. Recognition for a job well done, right? Like you said, being consulted about decisions affecting my job. Organization, loyalty to employees, right? Good working conditions, coworkers that are fun to be around, opportunity for promotion and advancement, good benefits, time off or leisure time, job security, opportunities for continuing education, an impressive job title, or help with personal problems. So those are some things to think about, guys, as far as what your employees might be looking for. Then if you have them rank them, then you'll know, do they want a boss that can trust, or good benefits, or just that title means everything to them, or money, so you see where does money rank on the scale? Is it number 7 or number 3, So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. There's so much more that drives us as human than just as money, right? Money is the same as oxygen. When you don't have enough to pay your bills, it's the only thing you can think about, right? I just need to breathe. As soon as you have enough of it, it no longer motivates, right? I no longer am motivated by breathing air once I have enough of it.
Bro, you are a multi-hundred millionaire, right? What
I've done well for myself.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is I've been able to share a lot of it along the way. So it was me and a main business partner that we started this thing. I was the face. He's kind of kind of the back end. And along the way, we attracted one of our keys to success is we attracted in good talent with a small piece of the pie. And so, the first time that we exited our business, I had 11 other people besides me and my business partner that we made multimillionaires in that transaction.
Yeah. So, okay. So obviously it's changed your life. I want to know what it's like. I think a lot of the other guys watching this, probably there might be nobody in this position that you're in watching this. What is it like, man, having 9 figures, over 100 million or whatever of cash? Like, what is that? How does that change your mindset, your life?
First off, I do not have 9 figures in cash. So
okay.
when you go, so once again, I do have other equity partners. I do have a lot of money, but you pay taxes, you pay all these other things.
Sure.
Most of my money is tied into real estate.
Yeah.
I am worth a very large amount of money,
right.
But yes, keeping liquid cash is not the case. But so just to be clear there.
Right.
But here's the thing is you fantasize about these things when you don't have it, right? You're like, oh, and we all have these fantasy points, right? Like when we're starting out our career, it's like, if I could just make 9 figures a year, my life will change. If I just have $1 million in my bank account, my life will change. If I just have $10 million in my bank account, my life will change. If I'm just worth $100 million, my life will change, right? Like there's literally always something bigger and better. Here's the reality. There's never one point that you come to in your career that like the heavens open and you're like crowned with a medal and say, congratulations, you did it. Life really doesn't change that much. In fact, I would highly recommend that you don't change your life too much as you hit these different inflection points, because what happens is most people will upgrade their lifestyle, and then they will have the same problems that they did when they were making 60 grand as when they're making $1 million a year, right? Like they're still living paycheck to paycheck. They're still doing these things. And so for me, like I've always known that I'm not motivated by money. Not always. Sorry, there was a certain point in my career when I realized I'm not motivated by money. And when I stopped being motivated by money and like these tiers is actually when I started making more money than I could handle. And the reason is I started focusing on value creation activities. Like I really love the word creator or creation. Like I think that is what brings us the most joy, the most happiness, the most fulfillment is when we are actively creating. In fact, I have never met a depressed or anxious person that is actively creating. I've met creators that aren't actively creating that are depressed, right? Like book writers or artists or stuff like that. And they're not actively doing it. And they're like, oh, I hate my life. And so the problem is if we attach our identity to a result, certain amount of money or whatnot, you are going to be sorely disappointed and probably end up committing suicide. This is the reason why Hollywood people, rest in peace, Robin Williams. But the reality is he probably fantasized about like one day I will have made it and life will be good. But then he probably found out, man, it's lonely at the top. Money isn't everything. I sacrificed a lot of great things along the way. And so then life just wasn't worth living anymore. And I really think that like each of us have to have a life that's worth living that isn't attached to money. And a lot of you guys are probably listening like, well, it's easy for you to say you've had 2 9-figure exits. But the reality is like, I believed this well before I was rich. And I really believe that that's the reason why I have been able to obtain the riches that I do have now. And so one thing I will share with you is April of 2023, I stepped down as the CEO of my business to spend more time with my kids and do different things. And I thought that maybe I'm going to try this retirement thing out. I spent about 6 weeks retired, and it was 6 of the most miserable weeks that I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. And, for guys wired like us, it's probably totally depressing.
It was depressing. I wasn't actively creating anything. Sure, I was spending some good time with my family and everything else. But the reality is like when you go from spending 50, 60, 70 hours a week working and you go and try to shift that to your kids, like my kids only need an extra 10 to 15 hours a week. They don't need 50 to 60 additional hours a week. Right. And so I quickly learned that like, I can't invest this additional time into my kids. I need to have something that I'm actively creating.
Yep.
And it was actually during that time when I decided I'm going to go and launch my podcast. I'm going and launching the Founder Project, in which we are going to go and build and invest into different businesses. And it wasn't until I did that I started getting fulfillment again. And so, yeah.
Wow.
So, asking the question, how does it feel? Like,
yeah,
I've tried never to change my life. And like, in fact, after my transaction, there's really only two things that I've bought. I bought a pimped out Mercedes Sprinter van that's got like a private jet interior look. That's really cool, 4x4, that take my family skiing up in the mountains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I bought that.
Invest in the family.
And I bought a nice watch to celebrate or commemorate the experience.
Yes.
I didn't upgrade. I didn't buy a new house. I didn't buy a bunch of new cars. I didn't go, all these different things, because like, I already loved my life. Like, why do I need to go and upgrade it
and change it?
And I find a lot of fulfillment in giving back. And so like, the more resources that I have to go and accomplish that, like, that gives me the most joy.
But you also invested in real estate, you said, and do you have some passive cash flow happening with multifamily?
Oh yeah.
Just like take a minute and tell us about the real estate real fast.
Yeah, man, I'm a big investor. In fact, before I launched SoulGen, I was a millionaire because of my real estate, right? Even after bankruptcy, like as soon as I filed bankruptcy, I immediately started investing again. But yeah, man, I own hundreds of doors of multifamily real estate. I have some really cool short-term rental properties that I have. I have this beautiful home in Hawaii that has a 25-foot waterfall in the back on 2.5 acres that backs up against state-owned property. In fact, the property that I own where my home sits, the king of Hawaii used to own, and he sold it in 1860. Like that's where he had his personal residence. Crazy. So like I got some really, really cool real estate, really stuff. Cool passion projects. And then I'm a big investor in the stock market and private equity.
Okay. So you invest in other people's businesses, and that's kind of what the Founder Project is about?
Yeah. So the Founder Project is about educating business owners and founders to build businesses the right way. And so with that, we have courses, we have mentorship groups or whatnot, but really the whole purpose is so I can identify companies that I can go and invest in, right? And so
how does that work? Do you take like an equity percentage?
Yeah. So I will either buy into a business and consult, or I will consult in exchange for equity. And so, a lot of people, they want my strategies, they want different things. And so those are, and I have a whole team built up. It's not just me. Many of my executives from my company that we exited are now working with me, and we're building this out. And that's kind of like the whole, so we got the Founder Podcast, which adds a ton of value up front. And then the Founder Project is the value from in the behind the scenes.
I heard that your Founder really cool podcast is like the top 20 entrepreneurial podcasts on Apple.
Yeah. So we're top 15 entrepreneur and top like 30 in all of business in the world.
That's really impressive. I mean, like how many like downloads? How do you count podcasts? I don't even have. I have like a YouTube channel. That's it. I don't have like a Spotify thing, at least yet.
Yeah.
But how do you count that? Like how many? Like
so I'm on different platforms. Like I'll give you some of the KPIs. Like last month on Spotify, I had 200,000 watch hours or listen hours on Spotify.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so I mean that's a lot of people listening for a long time.
Yeah,
if everybody just listened to 1 hour of my podcast, that's 200,000 people that were listening to my stuff for a long period of time.
That's really amazing. I mean, dude, that's what I like to really preach to a lot of these guys listening. If you have your own company, whatever, even if you don't, let people just get to know you, bro. Like people, if you're still watching right here, like Chris and Jesse kind of like more, like you're hanging out, like we're all chilling, you know what I'm saying? Then, those people that are watching your podcast can become your customers, like go into my coaching program because you feel more comfortable with me, like jesselane.com, or go to Chris's, the Founder Project, or watch his Founder, or listen or watch his Founder podcast. podcast. So yeah, I mean, it's just developing
I actually have a
relationships.
really cool stat that I want to share with your audience regarding that.
Sure.
And so it's the law of friendship with content creation. And essentially, if somebody spends 7 hours in your presence or listens to your stuff, whether that's your music, that's your videos or whatnot, 7 hours spent with you will make them think that they are now your friend. If they spend 50 hours, and here's the thing is your mind cannot subconsciously distinguish between physical and audio or video or anything else. Like it actually thinks that you spent, like if you've spent an hour with me and you go and spend 6 more hours listening to my stuff, your mind will think Chris Lee is my friend.
Yeah.
Okay. That's 7 hours. If you spend 50 hours, you will now think that Chris is your close friend, like very close friend. And if you spend 350 hours, your mind will actually think that I am your best friend, right? And so this applies to music, right? If somebody goes and listens to Taylor Swift's music, which my daughter, who's 17, has probably listened to 350 hours of Taylor.
Because it's like stories, right?
Right. Like she's probably listened to 350 hours of music, right? She thinks Taylor Swift, her mind, she may not admit this, but her mind subconsciously thinks that Taylor Swift is her best friend and she will do whatever Taylor Swift says. And that's the reason why influencer marketing works.
Right.
It's because these people subconsciously think that they are friends, close friends, or best friends, and eventually they will do whatever they recommend. And frankly, it's the weirdest thing because I'll go out in the wild, I'll be at an event, I'll be a keynote speaker or whatnot, and somebody will come up to me and they will act like they know me, and I have no idea who this person is.
Totally.
Right? It's because they have spent all this time with me, and in their mind, they're just like, "Of course you know me, Chris. We've spent 300 hours together.
Yeah.
Right? I've listened to all of your podcasts. I've consumed all your social media content. It's literally the wildest thing."
So, bro, if someone wants to take a similar path as you, right? They want to start their company. So what would be like a piece or two of advice that you would give to that kind of person?
So step number 1, go focus on culture. Like I said, if you want more details, like you can go figure it out culture yourself, or you can go buy my $29 thing through my Instagram link, whatever. I don't care. That's not a lot of money, but go focus on culture. Second is invest in things that are going to give you an ROI. Initially, for the first 2.5 years of my business, we operated our headquarters out of my shop, out of my garage. We had 53 people. And why? Because the investment into an office space wasn't going to get the same ROI as a dollar spent on marketing.
That's the biggest difference that I heard from your first company to the Solgen Power successful one was low overhead and not being and humility.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But more importantly, spending money on things that matter, right? Like things that are going to get me an ROI. I know if I go and spend $1 on marketing, I can get $30 to $40 in revenue in return. Yeah. And so why would I ever spend $1 on anything else than just looking and being the best, right? So to my customers, I was always a $1 billion organization. We had fantastic ads, fantastic content, fantastic trucks, fantastic all that stuff, while operating out of a garage, right?
Bro.
Now, eventually, I needed to spend more money on internal marketing to make sure that my experience for my internal customers are great. But dude, those are the two things. Like, focus on culture, spend on money on things that are going to return an investment. And then when you begin to think that you are successful, do not rob the business. Do not change your lifestyle. Keep patient. doubling up, double up.
Just stock it
until
away.
You're just growing so much that you have to distribute.
One thing I've always had the mindset of when I was building my company, I'm building this foundation of this company, right? Is I was always thinking to the next step. So if I'm a less than $1 million company, if I'm doing 300 or 400 or 500 grand a year, my first year or whatever, I'm going to build $1 million company systems and then operate like that. Once I'm doing $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, I'm going to build $5 to $10 million type systems where all the receipts go to the right place. Like all this, everyone does everything as much as possible the same way. Now that I'm doing 10, 15 million, I'm building $50 million systems, right? I'm building my whole software so my company can streamline, right? And so that's what I'm doing. Then when I get to 50 million, I'm going to start thinking quarter billion, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm going to start kind of thinking more along, you know, Chris, are you in your 40s or something, or how old are you?
I'm 39. I turn 40 next month.
Oh, dude, I got to come to your birthday party. No, but,
It's going to be in Dubai, so come on up to Dubai.
yeah, I don't know. So, bro, like that's really cool. I'm 32. You're still really young to have such success that you've had.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy. You know, the compound effect is very real, right? Like, and with that, I'll share with your audience, like one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd say is like, be patiently aggressive. And, you know, most entrepreneurs, they hear a story like mine, they hear the Mark Zuckerbergs or whatever else, and they're like, I need to have success in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Like Mark did it or whatnot. Right. You got to be patiently aggressive in the moment, taking all the action possible, but patient in the process. Like trust the freaking process. Think in decades, not 10 days. Think in 10 years, not 1 or 2 year chunks. Like you've got to be committed to spending the next 10 years of your life to working without results, right? Without attention to results, right? Bro. Like, of course you want results, but like inattention to the results, more attention to the actual process, right? Like be obsessed in the A plus B. Don't be obsessed with the C, which is the result. Be obsessed with these things because you're putting down roots. You're putting down roots. You're investing. You're doing all these different things, and before you know it, you're like, the law of doubling, you know, day 9, 10, 11, 12 of doubling becomes way more attractive than day 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so like, that's where most entrepreneurs screw up. They get distracted. They think, oh, this has been a waste of my time. I'm now going to shift over to something else, or a new opportunity presents itself, and they get off track, where they were literally just a couple compounds away from crushing it. Bro. But they went and they reset and they're like, oh, I'm going to go try something else.
The wife, the parents, the family, the friends, what are you doing, bro? Just go get a job as a project manager for someone else, you know, like just go be a superintendent, don't start your own company. That's what all I heard for the first 3 to 5 years. It's just all I heard. But there's like this like graphic of this guy with a tunnel, and the one guy is like right there on this like big gold mine, and he just gives up. But the other guy keeps going, you know, and he finally hits it. And that's where I feel like I am right now. 3 to 5 years was rough, but I knew at the core it was what I'm supposed to be doing. I knew it was a God calling vision, the gift, the path that I was wired for. And I just couldn't not see myself not owning a business. I'm like, God, I trust you. You know what I'm saying? Full faith in really, I mean, it was all God that made this happen, to put this spark in me to keep going. And then from 5 to 7 years, I'm like, oh, like nice. Like this is starting to work. And then it's 7 to 8 to 9. Now we're about to hit 10 years. Next month, I'm hitting 10 years in business. So I don't know what your birthday is next month, but actually, sorry, it's in March, but it's January 30th right now. But so in March, we're going to hit 10 years. But
awesome.
Yeah, it's just really, really exciting to have not given up. And I think most people, the 90% or whatever that you always hear about, it's because of that. It's because of this that we're talking about right now, is everyone's saying give up. And the fact that they actually want to give up, the fact that they really didn't know that they were supposed to really be doing this and it's going to work, having faith, you know, so, and thinking long-term. I love that you said think in decades, not 10 days. Yeah. Even don't think in 3 years, think in 10 years, you know, and that's really what it's
I love the quote. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, and very few realize how much they can accomplish in 5 to 10, you know? And so like, because the law of the compound effect is absolutely real, and those that unlock that principle find massive success.
Let me ask one question on just a work-life kind of balance situation.
Yep.
When someone's in that 3 to 5 year beginning period, and the wife's like, "You're not spending any time," like, "Babe, I have to send these proposals tonight, and I'm burning the midnight oil. Then I have to get up at 7 and make sure everything, because I don't have a project manager, I don't have an estimator. And I barely even have a superintendent that's good. I barely even have the admin bookkeeper. bookkeeping aspect covered. So what do you tell someone like that and they don't have the sales because they're stuck doing admin and bookkeeping and estimating, project management and marketing and the QuickBooks? They don't have the time to go out and sell. They don't have the time to make YouTube videos and go out and market and network and go to these events. And that's the hardest point right there. You have very minimal resources. Do they need to go get a line of credit? Do they need to hire an admin and a superintendent to go handle? What would you tell someone like that, man?
Yeah. So when you're talking about work-life balance, it's really about expectations and impact, right? Setting the proper expectations with your family, your wife, your friends that, hey, this is a season in which I'm going to have to spend this amount of time. And then going to the impact. There's no such thing as balance of time, but there absolutely is such thing as balance of impact. We all have 168 hours in the week, right? You cannot change that, right? You, me, Warren Buffett, we all have the same amount of time. So the question is, how can I be most impactful and how can I buy back some of that time? And so impact is, if I go home and I'm spending time with my kids, 15 minutes of engaged impact is way more life-changing and impactful to that child than 3 hours on my phone sitting next to them on the couch, right? Like being engaged in work or entertainment or anything else. And so the reason why most of us entrepreneurs struggle with this thing is we don't actually think in terms of impact. We think in terms of time. And so just going with my wife, hey, babe, I may not be able to spend all this time, but guess what? When we are together, we are going to be all out engaged and make sure that it's a very impactful time. And so, if I only get to spend 15 minutes a day with my wife or 20 minutes a day with my wife on pillow talk, I'm going to make sure that I ain't scrolling through Instagram Reels or TikTok Reels or whatever else, right? It's going to be this. I have to make sure that I get the same amount of impact that I would had I spent 3 hours with her. The same goes for working out, right? You can go and do a 20-minute workout that's super intense and get the same amount of impact that's spending 2 hours in the gym. And so, and that's really, for me, I'm always looking at things like impact. Is this the most impactful use of my time, right? And then how can I buy back my time? So yes, hiring the project manager or the executive assistant or whatnot, if what I'm currently doing is worth less than what I think my time is worth, I need to hire somebody in order to perform that task. If you're busy doing things that are literally $15, $20, $30 an hour work, and you really think that you're $1,000 an hour or whatever you can bring to the marketplace, then chances are you need to buy back your time and you need to spend your time doing the thing that is going to be most impactful in your business.
Which is marketing and sales.
Absolutely.
Ultimately. Yeah, I love that, man. That's a huge point. Impact across your whole life. You're impactful even in your sleep. What's the word I'm looking for? Intentionality. You're with your family and your kids and your wife intentionally. And you're with your business intentionally. You're with your sleep intentionally. And you're with maybe even your play intentionally, right? There's probably guys out here that love Netflix and video games. I didn't do any of that my first 3 to 5 years. I was just I literally don't have a spare thought to even take a breath. I'm going to choose to
But it's interesting. If people want to do Netflix and video games, they can do it. They just need to be impactful. Don't go spend 3 hours. Go and get your entertainment in 15, 20 minutes and playing with your homies and then move on, right? I have no qualms with people having hobbies or doing things. It's just the funny thing about life is that it simply is just a bunch of memories put together. And so here's an actually really interesting fact is that if you spend 15 minutes with your kids or 3 hours in their mind as a memory, they're never going to be able to understand the difference. So the same goes forth with watching Netflix or playing video games with your homies or going and doing whatnot. As long as the memory's there, you're going to be able to reflect on it. And it's going to be this great thing. And it's interesting. A lot of people say that the older you get, the faster time goes by. And it's actually not that at all. It's the older you get, the more you do the same things over and over again, and your mind cannot distinguish the difference between the memories. So if you actually want to slow down time, what you have to do is actually do more things, like have more memories. So like if I go on a vacation for 7 days, the first 1 or 2 days are going to be long. They're going to be because my mind is taking in all these new surroundings, new experiences. And then the next like 4 or 5 days go by super fast. It's because literally in your mind, it's stitched all the memories together. And so like understanding this in your own life, it's like, just be intentional and impactful with your time. Spend enough time to make a memory, then move on and go and do something that's going to get you results.
I really love that, man. Like not getting stuck. Like some people get stuck in video game land for like a decade, and then it's just like, crap, I just wasted a whole decade. That's what they're thinking.
Right. And in their mind, like the decade went so fast and they don't even like, it was a blur, right? Because it's literally all one memory.
Bro, you've shared so many insightful things today. It's unreal to see someone. You are like kind of like you are the definition of success, man. I mean, not to like but
I like to think I'm on the path.
But we're all on the path until we die. That's like the thing is, you're never gonna get there. And once you do, like you said, you might be miserable because we're wired to. God created humans to produce result for Him and build the kingdom of God. And whether it's that, you're building a business and that's how you're doing it, or you're growing a family and that's how you're doing it, and you just have a job just to pay the bills. And some people don't like to work like we do, like most people out there don't work. My wife and I have been talking about this recently. She's like, babe, like because she's kind of on the opposite spectrum. She's like, I just like to, before I met you, I just had like, a hairstylist job just to pay the bills to afford my life. But I'm like, but my work is my life.
Right.
She's like, that's crazy to me because I don't enjoy. She's fine with work, but I'm like, I love this. This is like, I'm plugged into my passion, like going towards my goals. I don't want to stop. Like I would do really bad being retired. I think it sounds like you do the same thing. You were retired for 6 weeks, the most miserable 6 weeks of your life.
Yeah. So the funny thing about retirement is like the traditional definition of retirement I hate, but my definition of retirement is being able to choose what I do every single day. And when you get that, then that's when you can really define yourself as retired. And frankly, I've been retired probably for the last 10 years because every single day has been intentional in my choice.
I would say like every entrepreneur is retired because it really is your choice. But in the first few years, you are all the roles. But once you fill the roles, like in my automation blueprint coaching program, I talk about filling all the roles. There's like a whole blueprint for it, a framework.
It's awesome.
Once they fill those roles, even if they're still the CEO and doing marketing, once they fill that sales role and everything else is delegated, they're retired. You could go drink pina coladas. You could go be a great CEO. You could go fiddle with the project manager and make sure he's doing it right. You could do whatever you want at that point. Then, like right now, I'm actually potentially looking to, maybe I would even get a CEO in the future. I'm not saying I'm definitely doing that, but it's a thought of hire a CEO, make that green, and just focus on marketing.
Absolutely.
Because I love that's my happy place. Like doing this is my happy place. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I just love it so much.
Yeah, the goal for every entrepreneur should be to do the thing that they absolutely love every single day and replace everything else through employees.
Yeah. And be careful with your personal life, because my parents fell into this trap. They would replace cooking, they would replace dog training, they would replace kid stuff, like they would replace tutoring, everything got replaced so they could focus on their real estate business. And our family life really suffered. And so my wife and I are currently, because I was on this like mental, like wired, like business. And my mom really drove it into me. And on my dad's side as well, lots of bloodline there with entrepreneurs and building your own business. And my mom was like crazy wired for like task oriented. So she was like, work is worship. And like, like if you're not like the Bible says, the lazy man is going to perish. And like, I'm like, I don't want to be lazy. Like I want to always be like, so my mind's always racing,
right.
But I'm really working right now, man, to kind of have more of a balance and space things out a little bit and be able to just breathe for a second. But I want to kind of counter your point as far as money. Like once you have $1 million in your account, then it's like, it doesn't make much of a difference. Now that I have over $1 million in my account, it has made a massive difference to my stress levels, because
for sure,
I've always felt like when you're on the verge of zero, and you're going and you've got to pay all the subs and you got to pay your employees. And it's like, for me, it's, 6 figures a month of just overhead. It's sometimes 7 figures a month of cost of goods sold and overhead and all that stuff just to run my business, 7 figures a month. So it's like, that's kind of scary. So I don't know, when you're so close to the line,
and that goes to my previous point of money is like oxygen. When you don't have enough oxygen, it's the only thing you can think about, and it's extremely stressful to get your next breath, right? Or if you're just right there at the where you're going below water, above water, below water, above water, right? Like that's stressful. And so you want to get to a point where you no longer have to think about it, right? That it's no longer the motivating factor, but to realize there's a whole lot more life after that. And so you got to really find out what those motivational factors are for you.
But you got to get there first.
Absolutely. You got to get the breaths.
You got to get the breaths. You have to get the oxygen. If it's $1 million, if it's 5 billion, whatever the number is, for you, it's a lot more, and that's amazing. And maybe it doesn't have to be that much for everybody.
Well, and the beauty of it is the amount of oxygen you need is depends on the amount of expenses. So the lower level of lifestyle that you have, the less oxygen you're going to need to survive. And so a lot of our need of oxygen or need of money is self-inflicted, and just realize that, if you exercise just a little bit of discipline, you don't need to live according to society's standards, right? You don't need to prove to anybody that you're rich or successful or anything else. Like, this is your life, live it.
You should boast that you have a new estimator, not a new Ferrari.
Yes.
Because you pay $100,000 for an estimator, or 100, 200 grand, whatever, for a fast car. It's like,
absolutely.
That's where then you're going to make even more money in the future, and your business, your clients are going to be even more happy.
Absolutely.
Then you go get a COO and have that chief operations officer. Bro, people complain to me, I don't have time. I'm like, do you know people are selling it on Indeed and ZipRecruiter and whatever else? I was like, they're like, oh yeah, like I'm like, yeah, you could go buy that.
The wealthy buy back their time. The poor sell their time, and so always you want to find yourself on the side of buying more time.
I love it. Well, Chris, where can people find you, man?
Man, Instagram's a great way, at Chris Lee QB, like quarterback. That's on all major social media platforms. Also, the Founder Podcast. I do have a YouTube channel. It's low subscribership. Most of my stuff is through Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But would love to. We're really focusing on the YouTube channel and growing that now. I think we're right around 2,000 subscribers. But yeah, man, would reach out to me through DMs on Instagram. It's me that responds. My team helps run some of my posts and stories, but most of the time it's me responding to those DMs.
Love that. Love that. Well, guys, definitely check him out. This guy is really quality. He's got the culture. He's got the character. He's got the business skills. So it's a pleasure having you on. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, leave a comment if you enjoyed it. Check out jesselane.com as well, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, Jesse.